What drives ordinary people to abandon everything for a dangerous journey into the unknown? In 1848, Jesse Wingate gathered his family and hundreds of others for a perilous trek across 2,000 miles of untamed wilderness toward Oregon. This is the epic of American expansion, told through the eyes of those who lived it.
Welcome to Haberdash Books. Subscribe for new forgotten classics every week. Find the full audiobook, our Patreon, and our full catalog at haberdashbooks.com. Links are in the description below. Emerson Hough was born in 1857 in Newton, Iowa, the son of a Quaker minister, and became one of the most prolific and celebrated writers of his generation. He spent decades as a war correspondent, novelist, and advocate for conservation, witnessing the American West firsthand during its final transformations. By the early 1920s, Hough was in his 60s, a respected elder of American letters when he completed The Covered Wagon in 1922. The novel was an immediate sensation, capturing the public imagination with its epic sweep of the Oregon Trail migration and its complex characters caught between personal desire and historical destiny. It was even adapted into a major motion picture in 1923, one of the first truly successful literary adaptations in cinema. Yet despite this early triumph, Hough's work gradually slipped from the literary canon. Part of this was timing. Modernism was reshaping literature, and the frontier novel came to be seen as quaint, regional, backward-looking. Hough himself faded from the university curriculum and the critical conversation. His death, the exact year remains uncertain. Lost to time itself marked the beginning of his erasure. Today, The Covered Wagon is virtually unknown outside specialized Western history circles, a masterpiece of American historical fiction abandoned by the very culture it helped define. This is the story of how one of our greatest novels about who we are became invisible.
Look at 'em come, Jesse. More and more. Must be 40 or 50 families. Molly Wingate, middle-aged, portly, dark-browed and strong, stood at the door of the rude tent which for the time made her home. She was pointing down the road which lay like an ecru ribbon thrown down across the prairie grass, bordered beyond by the timber-grown bluffs of the Missouri. Jesse Wingate allowed his team of harness-marked horses to continue their eager drinking at the watering hole of the little stream near which the camp was pitched, until, their thirst quenched, they began burying their muzzles and blowing into the water in sensuous enjoyment. He stood, a strong and tall man of perhaps 45 years, of keen blue eye and short, close-matted, tawny beard. His garb was the loose dress of the outlying settler of the western lands 3/4 of a century ago. A farmer, he must have been back home. Could this encampment, on the very front of the American civilization, now be called a home? Beyond the prairie road could be seen a double furrow of jet-black glistening sod, framing the green grass and its spangling flowers, first browsing of the plow on virgin soil. It might have been the opening of a farm. But if so, why the crude bivouac? Why the gear of travelers? Why the massed arc-like wagons, the scores of morning fires lifting lazy blue wreaths of smoke against the morning mists? The truth was that Jesse Wingate, earlier and impatient on the front, out of the very suppression of energy, had been trying his plow in the first white furrows beyond the Missouri in the great year of 1848. 400 other nearby plows alike were avid for the soil of Oregon, as witness this long line of newcomers, late at the frontier rendezvous. "It's the Liberty wagons from downriver," said the campmaster at length. "Missouri movers and settlers from lower Illinois. It's time. We can't lie here much longer waiting for Missouri or Illinois, either. The grass is up." "Well, we'd have to wait for Molly to end her spring term, teaching in Clay School in Liberty," rejoined his wife. "Else why'd we send her there to graduate? $12 a month, cash money, ain't to be sneezed at." "No, nor is 2,000 miles of trail between here and Oregon before snow to be sneezed at either. If Molly ain't with those wagons, I'll send Jed over for her today. If I'm going to be captain, I can't hold the people here on the river any longer, with May already begun." "She'll be here today," asserted his wife. "She said she would. Besides, I think that's her riding a little one side the road now. Not that I know who all is with her. One young man, too." Well, with maternal pride, Molly ain't never lacked for beaux. "But look at the wagons come," she added. "All the country's going west this spring, it certainly seems like." It was the spring gathering of the westbound wagon trains, stretching from Old Independence to Westport Landing, the spot where that very year the new name of Kansas City was heard among the emigrants as the place of the jump-off. It was now an hour by sun, as these Western people would have said, and the low-lying valley mists had not yet fully risen, so that the atmosphere for a great picture did not lack. It was a great picture, a stirring panorama of an earlier day, which now unfolded. Slow, swaying, stately, the ox teams came on, as though impelled by and not compelling the fleet of white canvas sails. The teams did not hasten, did not abate their speed, but moved in an unagitated advance that gave the massed column something irresistibly epical in look. The train, foreshortened to the watchers at the rendezvous, had a well-spaced formation, 20 wagons, 30, 40, 47, as Jesse Wingate mentally counted them. There were outriders, there were clumps of driven cattle. Along the flanks walked tall men, who flung over the low-headed cattle an admonitory lash whose keen report presently could be heard, still faint and far off. A dull dust cloud arose, softening the outlines of the prairie ships. The broad gestures of arm and trunk, the monotonous soothing of commands to the sophisticated kine as yet remained vague, so that still it was properly a picture done on a vast canvas, that of the frontier in '48. A picture of might, of inevitableness. Even the sober souls of these waiters rose to it, felt some thrill they themselves had never analyzed. A boy of 20, tall, blond, tousled, rode up from the grove back of the encampment of the Wingate family. "You, Jed," said his father, "ride on out and see if Molly's there." "Sure she is," commented the youth, finding a plug in the pocket of his jeans. "That's her, 2 fellers like usual." "Sam Woodhull, of course," said the mother, still hand over eye. "He hung around all winter, telling how him and Colonel Doniphan whipped all Mexico and won the war. If Molly ain't in a wagon of her own, it ain't his fault anyways." "I'll rest assured it's account of Molly's going out to Oregon that he's going too." "Well," and again, "well. Who's the other fellow, though?" demanded Jed. "I can't place him this far." Jesse Wingate handed over his team to his son and stepped out into the open road, moved his hat in an impatient signal, half of welcome, half of command. It apparently was observed. To their surprise, it was the unidentified rider who now set spur to his horse and came on at a gallop ahead of the train. He rode carelessly well, a born horseman. In no more than a few minutes, he could be seen as rather a gallant figure of the border cavalier, a border just then more martial than it had been before '46 and the days of 54-40 or fight. A shrewd man might have guessed this young man. He was no more than 28, to have got some military air on a border opposite to that of Oregon, the far southwest, where Taylor and Scott and the less-known Doniphan and many another fighting man had been adding certain thousands of leagues to the soil of this republic. He rode a compact, short-coupled, cat-hammed steed, coal-black, and with a dashing forelock reaching almost to his red nostrils, a horse never reared on the fat Missouri cornlands. Neither did this heavy embossed saddle with its silver concho decorations then seem familiar so far north, nor yet the thin braided leather bridle with its hair frontlet band and its mighty bit, nor again the great spurs with jingling rowel bells. This rider's mount and trappings spoke the far and new Southwest, just then coming into our national ken. The young man himself, however, was upon the face of his appearance nothing of the swashbuckler. True, in his close-cut leather trousers, his neat boots, his tidy gloves, his rather jaunty broad black hat of felted beaver, he made a somewhat raffish figure of a man as he rode up, weight on his under thigh, sidewise, and hand on his horse's quarters carelessly. But his clean-cut, unsmiling features, his direct and grave look out of dark eyes, spoke him a gentleman of his day and place, and no mere spectacular pretender assuming a virtue though he had it not. He swung easily out of saddle, his right hand on the tall, broad Spanish horn as easily as though rising from a chair at presence of a lady, and removed his beaver to this frontier woman before he accosted her husband. His bridle he flung down over his horse's head, which seemingly anchored the animal, spite of its loud whinnying challenge to these nearby stolid creatures which showed harness rubs and not whitened saddle hairs. "Good morning, madam," said he in a pleasant, quiet voice. "Good morning, sir. You are Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Wingate, I believe. Your daughter yonder told me so." "That's my name," said Jesse Wingate, eyeing the newcomer suspiciously but advancing with ungloved hand. "You're from the Liberty train?" "Yes, sir. My name is Banion, William Banion. You may not know me. My family were Kentuckians before my father came out to Franklin. I started up in the law at old Liberty town yonder not so long ago, but I've been away a great deal." "The law, eh?" Jesse Wingate again looked disapproval of the young man's rather pronouncedly neat turnout. "Then you're not going west?" "Oh, yes, I am, if you please, sir. I've done little else all my life. 2 years ago I marched with all the others with Donovan for Mexico. Well, the war's over and the treaty's likely signed. I thought it high time to march back home. But you know how it is, the long trail's in my blood now. I can't settle down. Wingate nodded. The young man smilingly went on. I want to see how it is in Oregon. What with new titles and the like, and a lot of fighting men cast in together out yonder, too, there ought to be as much law out there as here, don't you think? So I'm going to seek my fortune in the far west. It's too close and tame in here now. He smiled just a bit more obviously and deprecatingly. I'm leading yonder cabalad of our neighbors, with a bunch of Illinois and Indiana wagons. They call me Colonel William Banion. It is not right, I was no more than Will Banion, Major under Donovan. I am not that now. A shadow came over his face. He shook it off as though it were tangible. So I'm at your service, sir. They tell me you've been elected captain of the Oregon train. I wanted to throw in with you if I might, sir. I know we're late, we should have been in last night. I rode in to explain that. May we pull in just beside you on this water? Molly Wingate, on whom the distinguished address of the stranger, his easy manner and his courtesy had not failed to leave their impression, answered before her husband. You certainly can, Major Banion. Mr. Banion, please? Well then, Mr. Banion, the water and grass is free. The day's young, drive in and light down. You said you saw our daughter, Molly. I know you did, for that's her now. The young man colored under his bronze of tan, suddenly shy. I did, said he. The fact is, I met her earlier this spring at Clay Seminary where she taught. She told me you all were moving west this spring, said this was her last day. She asked if she might ride out with our wagons to the rendezvous. Well, that's a fine horse you got there, interrupted young Jed Wingate. Spanish? Yes, sir. Wild. Oh no, not now, only of rather good spirit. Ride him if you like. Gallop back if you'd like to try him and tell my people to come on and park in here. I'd like a word or so with Mr. Wingate. With a certain difficulty, yet insistent, Jed swung into the deep saddle, sitting the restive, rearing horse well enough withal, and soon was off at a fast pace down the trail. They saw him pull up at the head of the caravan and motion, wide-armed, to the riders, the train not halting at all. He joined the two equestrian figures on ahead, the girl and the young man whom his mother had named as Sam Woodhull. They could see him shaking hands, then doing a curvet or so to show off his newly borrowed mount. He takes well to riding, your son, said the newcomer approvingly. He's been crazy to get west, assented the father. Wants to get among the buffalo. We all do, said Will Banion. None left in Kentucky this generation back, none now in Missouri. The plains, his eye gleamed. That's Sam Woodhull along, resumed Molly Wingate. He was with Donovan. Yes. Banion spoke so shortly that the good dame, owner of a sought-for daughter, looked at him keenly. He lived at Liberty, too. I've known Molly to write of him. Yes, suddenly and with vigor. She knows him, then? Why, yes. So do I, said Banion simply. He was in our regiment, captain and adjutant, paymaster and quartermaster chief, too, sometimes. The Army regulations never meant much with Donovan's column. We did as we liked, and did the best we could, even with paymasters and quartermasters. He colored suddenly, and checked, sensitive to a possible charge of jealousy before this keen-eyed mother of a girl whose beauty had been the talk of the settlement now for more than a year. The rumors of the charm of Molly Wingate, little Molly, as her father always called her to distinguish her from her mother, now soon were to have actual and undeniable verification to the eye of any skeptic, who mayhap had doubted mere rumors of a woman's beauty. The three advance figures, the girl, Woodhull, her brother Jed, broke away and raced over the remaining few hundred yards, coming up abreast, laughing in the glee of youth exhilarated by the feel of good horseflesh under knee and the breath of a vital morning air. As they flung off, Will Banion scarce gave a look to his own excited steed. He was first with a hand to Molly Wingate as she sprang lightly down, anticipating her other cavalier, Woodhull, who frowned, none too well pleased, as he dismounted. Molly Wingate ran up and caught her mother in her strong young arms, kissing her roundly, her eyes shining, her cheeks flushed in the excitement of the hour, the additional excitement of the presence of these young men. She must kiss someone. Yes, the rumors were true, and more than true. The young schoolteacher could well carry her title as the belle of old Liberty Town here on the far frontier. A lovely lass of 18 years or so, she was, blue of eye and of abundant red-brown hair of that tint which ever has turned the eyes and heads of men. Her mouth, smiling to show white, even teeth, was wide enough for comfort in a kiss, and turned up strongly at the corners, so that her face seemed always sunny and carefree, were it not for the recurrent grave, almost somber look of the wide-set eyes in moments of repose. Above the middle height of woman's stature, she had none of the lank irregularity of the typical frontier woman of the early Ague lands, but was round and well-developed. Above the open collar of her brown riding costume stood the flawless column of a fair and tall white throat. New ripened into womanhood, wholly fit for love, gay of youth and its racing veins, what wonder Molly Wingate could have chosen not from 2 but 20 suitors of the best in all that countryside. Her conquests had been many since the time when, as a young girl, and fulfilling her parents' desire to educate their daughter, she had come all the way from the Sangamon country of Illinois to the best school then existent so far west, Clay Seminary, of quaint old Liberty. The touch of dignity gained of the ancient traditions of the South, never lost in 2 generations west of the Appalachians, remained about the young girl now, so that she rather might have classed above her parents. They, moving from Kentucky into Indiana, from Indiana into Illinois, and now on to Oregon, never in all their toiling days had forgotten their reverence for the gentlemen and ladies who once were their ancestors east of the Blue Ridge. They valued education, felt that it belonged to them, at least through their children. Education, betterment, progress, advance, those things perhaps lay in the vague ambitions of twice 200 men who now lay in camp at the border of our unknown empire. They were all Americans, 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation Americans. Wild, uncouth, rude, unlettered, many or most of them, nonetheless there stood among them now and again some tall flower of that culture for which they ever hungered, for which they fought, for which they now adventured yet again. Surely American also were these 2 young men whose eyes now unconsciously followed Molly Wingate in hot craving even of a morning thus far breakfastless, for the young leader had ordered his wagons on to the rendezvous before crack of day. Of the 2, young Woodhull, planter and man of means, mentioned by Molly's mother as open suitor, himself at first sight had not seemed so ill a figure either. Tall, sinewy, well-clad for the place and day, even more foppish than Banion in boot and glove, he would have passed well among the damsels of any courthouse day. The saddle and bridle of his mount also were a trace to the elegant, and the horse itself, a classy chestnut that showed blue grass blood, even then had cost a pretty penny somewhere, that was sure. Sam Woodhull, now moving with a half-dozen wagons of his own out to Oregon, was reputed well-to-do, reputed also to be well-skilled at cards, at weapons, and at women. Townsmen accorded him first place with Molly Wingate, the beauty from east of the river, until Will Banion came back from the wars. Since then had been another manner of war, that is ancient as male and female. That Banion had known Woodhull in the field in Mexico, he already had let slip. What had been the cause of his sudden pulling up of his starting tongue? Would he have spoken too much of that acquaintance? Perhaps a closer look at the loose lips, the high cheeks, the narrow, close-set eyes of young Woodhull, his rather assertive air, his slight, indefinable swagger, his slouch in standing, might have confirmed some skeptic disposed to analysis who would have guessed him less than strong of soul and character. For the most part, such skeptics lacked. By this time, the last belated unit of the Oregon caravan was at hand. The feature of the dusty drivers could be seen. Unlike Wingate, the newly chosen master of the train who had horses and mules about him, the young leader, Banion, captained only ox teams. They came now, slow-footed, steady, low-headed, irresistible, indomitable, the same locomotive power that carried the hordes of Asia into Eastern Europe long ago. And as in the days of that invasion the conquerors carried their households, their flocks and herds with them, so now did these half-savage Saxon folk have with them their all. Lean boys, brown, barefooted girls flanked the trail with driven stock. Chickens clucked in coops at wagon side. Uncounted children thrust out tousled heads from the openings of the canvas covers. Dogs beneath, jostling the tar buckets, barked in hostile salutation. Women in slatted sunbonnets turned impassive gaze from the high front seats, back of which, swung to the bows by leather loops, hung the inevitable family rifle in each wagon. And now, at the tailgate of every wagon, lashed fast for its last long journey, hung also the family plow. It was 48 and the grass was up. On to Oregon. The Ark of our Covenant with progress was passing out. Almost it might have been said to have held every living thing, like that other Ark of old. Banion hastened to one side, where a grassy level beyond the little stream still offered stance. He raised a hand in gesture to the right. A sudden note of command came into his voice, lingering from late military days. By the right and left flank wheel, march, With obvious training, the wagons broke apart, alternating right and left, until two long columns were formed. Each of these advanced, curving out, then drawing in, until a long ellipse closed at front and rear was formed methodically and without break or flaw. It was the barricade of the plains, the moving fortresses of our soldiers of fortune, going west, across the plains, across the Rockies, across the deserts that lay beyond. They did not know all these dangers, but they thus were ready for any that might come. "Look, Mother." Molly Wingate pointed with kindling eye to the wagon maneuver. "We trained them all day yesterday and long before. Perfect." Her gaze mayhap sought the tall figure of the young commander, chosen by older men above his fellow townsman, Sam Woodhull, as captain of the Liberty train. But he now had other duties in his own wagon group. Ceased now the straining creak of gear, and came rattle of yokes as the pins were loosed. Cattle guards appeared and drove the work animals apart to graze. Women clambered down from wagon seats. Sober-faced children gathered their little arms full of wood for the belated breakfast fires. Boys came down for water at the stream. The westbound paused at the Missouri, as once they had paused at the Don. A voice arose, of some young man back among the wagons busy at his work, paraphrasing an antebellum air. "Oh, then, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I'm going out to Oregon, with my banjo on my knee."
Discover the full story of the Wingate family's journey by finding the complete audiobook of The Covered Wagon at Haberdash Books.